It's the divorced fisherman's boat. She got half. All right, let's see if we can get some of these fish to bite some of these baits today. I don't know how hungry they are, but how you doing? I'm Bobby Uhrig. I'm president of a company right here in Freehold, New Jersey called MegaStrike. I've been fortunate enough to be in this area and fish a lot of the local lakes and ponds around here, but one of the reasons that I've had a lot of knowledge on the water is because of my passion for fishing. Ever since I was a little boy, probably about the age of these little guys right here, my dad always had time to take me fishing. We actually grew up in the Bronx, New York, and there weren't a lot of lakes and ponds there, so we used to go to my grandmother's house up in the Catskills and spend a lot of time on the water up there. And like I said, I learned to really love the sport of fishing. It was getting away. It was spending quality time with my dad and my brother. And it's something that was instilled in me, and I still love it to this day. So, you know, as I got older and I started going through grammar school, I always loved fishing. Getting into high school and out of high school, I always spent a lot of time on the water. So my quest for knowledge on why fish do what they do, and I spent a lot of time with fisheries biologists and environmental scientists, and you know, like I said, I wanted to find out why fish do what they do. Why are fish in certain areas of the lake at certain times of the day and certain times of the year? Because when I would go fishing, if you weren't catching, it wasn't any fun. It was still quality time out with my parents and my mom and dad and stuff, but you know, when you're catching fish, it's more fun than not catching fish. So back in the 90s, I was fortunate enough to go out there and fish the Bassmasters Tournament Trail. I got to go out there and fish the most beautiful lakes, be with the greatest guys you could ever meet. Everybody that's on ESPN versus, I've been on Roland Martin's fishing show. It was one of the greatest times I've ever had. And like I said, my quest for knowledge of how these fish work, you know, I was really inquisitive about that. So what I want to show you today is how to catch and locate bass, or actually locate and catch fish, and not waste a lot of time searching and looking for those fish. So a lot of guys ask me, and parents ask me, you know, when you go to a body he got me. He got me. Right, no water. He got me. So like I said, what we want to do is we want to eliminate as much unproductive water as we can. We want to, you know, like I said, we want to go out onto that lake and we want to catch fish as rapidly as we can too. So when, you know, parents and other people ask me, how do you locate bass? Where do you know where to start? So the first thing I would do is usually look at a map of the lake. But if you don't have the map of the lake and you just kind of wander out to a pond or a lake, what I like to do is I like to find the weeds. When you find the weeds, I can pretty much guarantee you that the bass are in the weeds, but there are certain variables and conditions that put them in certain areas of those weeds. So when the bass are in the weeds, they're in there for a reason. The food is in the weeds. The little bait fish hide in the weeds. That's their little security. That's their sanctuary. You know, they're protected in the weeds. But the bass are in the weeds also because the weeds are putting off oxygen. When I look for weeds in the lake, I look for the greenest weeds that I can find. The greener the weeds, the more oxygen the weeds are producing, and the more active the fish will be. So if I see brown and dead or dying weeds, I stay away from them. Brown, dead, dying weeds deplete oxygen from water. So like I said, if you want to find good active fish, find the weeds. So what I'll do is I'll walk around the lake, I'll go out and I'll find the greenest weeds I can find, and I'll start trying to use a search bait. A search bait is a bait that you could use to cover a lot of water rapidly. Like I said, we have a philosophy that 90% of the fish are in 10% of the water. That's meaning that the fish are in certain areas. And what I do in those weeds is I find little areas of stumps, rocks, rock piles, boulders in that weed patch. And as you can see here, one of the things that I got to do was when I was diving with my buddy Tim Simos. He's one of the world's most renowned underwater photographers. We spent almost 22 years filming and diving with bass, and that was up in Round Valley and a lot of the local lakes and ponds. And what we'd do is we'd study the bass in their natural environments. And one of the things that I did when I was younger, was I would go to like a laydown, a tree that fell into the water, and I would take a regular, you know, rubber worm, and I would pitch it in there, and I would catch a fish. And I'd say, hey, I caught a fish here, so I would go to the next tree. And what I didn't know was when we were watching the fish when we were diving, was there wasn't one fish in that lake, in that laydown, okay, in that area. There could be 5, 10, 30, 50 fish in one big tree that were living inside of that tree and all the little branches and stuff, just like you see them here. The fish are in schools, and if there's one fish there, then you have to slow down and fish for those fish. You can go to a tournament. Now, like I said, we were doing tournaments where you need to catch 5 fish in that tournament or you're gonna go home without any money, and we're fishing for $100,000 for first place. So every fish counts. You don't want to jump from place to place to place. You want to fish for the fish. You never leave fish to go find fish. You got to get that in your head saying, if I know there are fish in this area, fish that until the area is depleted. You know, spend some time there and use different techniques to find those fish. All right, so like I said, when I go to a lake, I find the greenest weeds that I can find. If I can find different variables of components that are in there, like rock piles and laydowns, that's what I'll fish, because the fish are near them. So what I'll use is a spinnerbait, a search bait, and I will do what we call a fan cast. I'll throw straight out, and then I'll go to the 1 o'clock position, then the 2 o'clock position, 3 and 4 o'clock position. Well, 3 o'clock is 90 degrees, so you'll be right along the bank, and just cover that area. Take, you know, 20, 30 casts in that area, cover that area. If you don't catch any fish there, okay, kind of move on to the next area. But let me show you this spinnerbait. This is a spinnerbait that I designed. It's actually the first jointed spinnerbait, and this is pretty unique, but we'll get into that a little later on. You take a spinnerbait, and what this does is it mimics a bait fish. Bass and other predatory fish, 98% of what they eat are other smaller fish. It's just the food chain. Okay, the other comprise of crustaceans and little insects and stuff like that, but mostly they're eating the smaller fish. So what you want to do is you take that bait, throw it out there, and you can work it in all different areas of the water column. First, you start off bringing it in fast, and that will eliminate the real active fish. They're going to go and chase that bait and chase it down. But then what you want to do is you want to slow that bait down and fish the middle of the water column. And all you have to do there is just slow down the retrieve. Let it sink a little bit. Okay, and all of these hooks, I'm just letting everybody know, Jimmy always lets us use this tank here. He's a real great guy for letting us do that. All of these hooks are bent down, so we can't hook these fish. And then what you do is you slow roll it down the bottom. Cover all the water columns. We catch bass on spinnerbaits 30 feet deep. Okay, so once you catch a fish or two in that area, okay, then you know the bass are in that area. So then you want to slow it down even more. Now, one of the other baits that I use is a swim bait. Now, this is a Mega Shad. This is a pretty cool swim bait here. I designed it real fat, not hydrodynamic, so it doesn't just swim like a regular bait fish in the water, not flat-sided like Mother Nature intended it. I made it a little fatter so it has a wobble to it. And we put it on this Shaky Head here. So what it'll do is it'll have a wobble. It'll look a little bit different, like an injured bait fish. And these pretty much, they'll produce a lot of strikes. And we'll put a little MegaStrike on here. And what this is an amino acid-based fish attractant. It's the first of its kind in the world. And what it does is it makes a artificial bait that doesn't taste like anything, plastic. It makes it taste real to the fish. The amino acids are the building blocks of proteins. So what you do with these is you throw them out just like that spinnerbait. If it's a little weedy out and the weeds are getting in the blades, then you got to go kind of like to a weedless bait. And this is really simple. It's just a fat little bait shaped like a minnow. And like I said, I always put MegaStrike on there. MegaStrike will have those fish hold on to those baits. If it doesn't taste real to the fish, their natural defense system kicks in, they pick it up and they spit it out before you ever get a chance to set that hook. So with the swim baits, same thing. Just slow roll it, reel it in. I see you down there, stay out of trouble. So throw it out there, reel it in nice and slow, and let those fish just grab that bait. Okay, do you see how those fish will hold on to those baits? Okay, anybody, and I'm talking a 4-year-old kid to a 95-year-old grandmother can detect that strike with the MegaStrike on there because they're not going to let it go. And like I said, when we were fishing for, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars, if you miss one fish, it's the difference between winning the tournament and losing the tournament. But more important than that right now is we just want to show you can do this the same way as that spinner bait. You can fish it fast, you can fish it slow, but you can see that wobble in there. And what it's doing is just mimicking a bait fish. So when we know that these fish are here like we do now, okay, we want to slow it down even more because there can be, you know, 5, 10, 15 fish in that school. The other bait that I want to show you is a drop shot. Okay, a lot of freshwater fishermen take credit for developing this rig. This rig has been used in saltwater for 60 years. And what it is, it's a small weight. This is called a Mojo Weight, and I hope everybody can see it here. It's a weight that's put on the bottom, okay? Then you have a hook set anywhere from 8 to 16, 17 inches above that weight. And what happens there is when you have a real mucky bottom, you know, a lot of silt and stuff, if you drop a jig or a worm into it, kind of gets lost in there and the bass have a hard time, you know, picking it out of there. It's hard to detect. But if you can take this bait, have that weight on the bottom, and that bait just sitting in front of their face, you know, tantalizing and tempting them, they're gonna snap at that bait. Now this is one of our stick baits here. This soft plastic stick bait is the most amazing bait out there. I'll get them to try to eat some of this too. And what you do, this is a real simple technique. Put some goo on there, see if they'll eat it. And all you do, now what you want to do is you just want to toss this out. Let it hit the bottom and put tension in it, okay? You want to put tension in that line. You want that bait to be off of the bottom. And what you do is you just it sits right in his face, and you just take it and you shake it. Set it and forget it. And what you do is, I'll try to get it on this rock here. I got a little bit on that weight system there too. All right, you see how it sits up off the bottom there? And that's what you want it to do. You want to sit it right in his face, and you just take it and you shake it in front of him. Now these fish, we've been on this tank for 4 days, you know, about 5 or 6 times a day, and these fish have seen every bait that we've thrown at them, and they're still eating it. All right, so that is the drop shot weight. Okay, let me show you the greatest bait ever invented in the history of bass fishing. It was developed by a guy named Gary Yamamoto, and it is called the Senko. And it's a soft plastic stick bait. And what it is, this bait is a very subtle bait. This bait will outcatch every bait in this building combined. And the reason, everybody asks me, Bobby, why does this bait work so well? Everybody thinks, is it a caterpillar that falls out of a tree and kind of makes a little wiggling movement? And I said, no. I said, I've watched this bait and studied it for many years underwater. And what it does is it falls into the water. And what you do is you just give it 1 or 2 little twitches and it falls. And it acts like a dying bait fish. And when my dad used to take me shiner fishing, we used to hook the shiner through the back. And when the shiner would do this, it was kind of on its last leg, and then it would fall. And that's when the bait fish would get attacked. It's Mother Nature's way of, you know, it's like on National Geographic, they say the lion will, you know, attack 1 zebra out of a herd of 10,000. They know which one to go after. So the same thing with the bass and the bait fish. I'm actually gonna see if I got another one up here. That one had a rip in it, so I'm just gonna leave it. Like I said, these hooks are bent. Put a little goo on there. And watch how easy this is. These guys seem a little bit hungry today. They're not really active, but they seem to be very hungry. And that's called a Wacky Rig. You take a #1 Eagle Claw bait holder hook, and you just rig it right in the middle. Let me show these guys down here first. Just like that. Okay. They work for you. And what they do is you just take it and you shake it just like this. And you just pull it 2 or 3 times, and in the water, you know, it's going to have a little bit more resistance. But check this bait out. Like I said, we put a little MegaStrike on there. You just sit there, you let it fall, you give it a twitch or 2, and they just sit there. And just twitch it, nice and slow. And you see how it poses no threat? They don't have to chase it far. It's not like a buzz bait, a spinner bait, or anything like that. It's not real obnoxious. It's a simple meal. It's an easy meal for them to get. And all you do is you just let it sit there and you give it a twitch. And I'm telling you, now these fish have seen this bait for the last 4 days, you know, a couple of 100 times a day. In the wild, there are bass out there that have never seen a lure. They will eat that bait. And let me tell you, Dad and Mom, when you take your kids fishing, like I said, if they're not catching fish, they're out throwing rocks in the water, and it's no fun for anybody. But if you can get them out there throwing baits that they're catching fish, you can catch more fish in 1 hour with one of these baits, and like I said, every other bait here that you can fish all day. But it's a real simple bait to throw. You throw it out there, you let it sink 2 or 3 feet, and just give it a twitch or 2. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and just let it fall. And they will sit there and they will eat that thing. Let it fall and just work it nice and slow. And like I said, when there's more than 1 fish around there, they will eat that. They will eat that bait. Let's see if we can get it real close here. Like I said, they just inhale it. Like I said, with the MegaStrike on there, they are going to hold that bait and they'll swim away with it. And even if you have like a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid on it, he's going to feel that fish on there. Look at that rod tip. And like I said, there's no hook on there that's going to catch that fish. They just want to suck that stuff off of there. All right, we got one more little technique that we're going to try here. And I got to bend that hook a little bit here. Shaky head fishing has taken over the bass fishing circuit. And the shaky head was designed in Japan to catch finicky bass in clear, deep water impoundments. Super clear water like this, so it's really hard to fool the fish. So what they did was they started using, instead of real big bulky baits, they started downsizing to catch the bass that, you know, they weren't in the mood for a real big meal, and that, you know, those big bulky baits often scare the fish as well. So they developed a head with a 60 or a 90 degree bend in the head. And the whole concept was to pull out into real deep water and horizontally present the bait to the fish. I hope they don't eat this real quick, but I'll show you. The concept of the shaky head is to present that bait this way, okay, to the fish. But when it came to the United States, the shaky head changed. They started fishing it on the bottom just like a regular lead head. And when we were filming that, it was just like using a regular Texas rig and dragging it along the bottom. We want those baits to stand vertical. All right, we'll try to get it on this rock real quick and see how that design of that head keeps that bait upward like that. You want your baits vertical up off the bottom. And even if you drag it along the bottom, watch, it'll roll forward and keep that bait up. And all that is on it. Look at them, it's like a bird on a quail there. And all you do is you snap those baits and it'll entice those strikes. And this stuff, let me tell you, you know, one of the other things, and I'm not here to push product, I don't care about that. We want to show people what these baits do and how to apply them. I actually, I own a company called MegaStrike. I started this company about 10 years ago, and we started designing lures that catch fish. There's a million other bait companies out there that catch fishermen. All right, if you're not catching fish with those baits, they sit in the bottom of your tackle box. Like I said, we design baits that catch fish because, you know, like I said, we're all kids at heart. You know, life goes on and life gets tough. Time on the water with your kids, man, let me tell you, it's great. So like I said, just take those baits, throw them out there, shake them, and that's the shaky head technique right there. And what they do, they hold on to those baits and you catch more fish. And like I said, they call it fishing when you're not catching. They call it catching when you're catching fish. But I want to show you that real quick, how that head stands right up. And watch this. It's got a fulcrum on it where you give it slack. Well, that guy's right on top of that thing right there. Let go. And all you got to do is give it a little twitch, and it'll provoke that strike. Well, I hope I gave you an idea of how to catch fish. You know, if anybody has any questions, we're in the MegaStrike booth. It's over in the 900 aisle here. Just go out there and, believe me, take your kids fishing. They'll remember it forever.